Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about the 10th house in astrology, otherwise known as the MC or midheaven. Now, in astrology, the midheaven, 10th house MC, it governs authority figures. It's connected with our status, notoriety, reputation, our standing in the community, the public image, in our career and livelihood. Now, with the 10th house, the first thing I'll look at, as far as the sign on it, I look at that first. Maybe I can use my chart as an example. I have Aquarius on the cusp of my 10th house in my natal chart. Now, as far as how the public may see me, perhaps I'm viewed as a little bit eccentric, perhaps maybe a little bit different, unique to some people. That might be one way to look at it. Maybe the maverick. I kind of do my own thing, my own way, in my own time. Perhaps I've even been a little bit rebellious against authority from time to time, as far as working at various places. What I want to say too is that the sign is important to look at. Now, for example, with the Aquarius on the 10th house, it could indicate what I stated. And also, for example, the person might be interested as far as career endeavors, computers, electronics, perhaps in esoteric subjects such as astrology, maybe even innovation and inventing may be prominent in this person's career interests. So those are some things to look at. As far, if you look at the sign on the as far as Aquarius on the 10th house cusp goes, and that's the first thing I'll look at, is the sign on it. Now, the next thing to look at is see if you have any planets in your 10th house that might flavor it. Somebody, let's say, that has Jupiter in their 10th house, for example, this person might bring a very ebullient and philosophical nature into their career matters. And they may be seen as others, perhaps as very exuberant and philosophical. It could indicate that this enthusiasm is injected in their livelihood, in their careers. And those are in, let's say, another example, let's say somebody has Mars in the 10th house. Well, this could indicate possibly there might be some acrimonious situations in one's career. It could show a lot of assertiveness and aggressiveness in matters pertaining to their livelihood, to their career. It could also indicate in some isolated maybe cases that the situation perhaps with the dominant parent or the father may be which is another thing that the 10th house governs. It might be somewhat contentious. So those are some things to consider as far as if you look at planets that inhabit the 10th house. Now, the next thing to look at is see where the ruler of the 10th house is located, what house. Now, let's say somebody has the ruler of the 10th house posited in their 3rd house in their natal chart. Well, this may suggest that perhaps the person brings their career matters maybe perhaps into, I guess you could say, maybe with brothers and sisters, their siblings, if applicable. Perhaps the career may involve something 3rd house, like such as something with communications, such as data or telecommunications, broadcasting, writing, journalism. For example, if somebody, let's say, has the ruler of the 10th house posited in their 12th house, it could indicate there might be some limitation or restriction in matters connected with the person's career. There might be something where the 12th house, we could look at it, perhaps the person career might involve maybe something with the metaphysical, something spiritual, perhaps with this placement, it can indicate that maybe this person finds some vocation that's connected perhaps with the oppressed, homeless, people that are less fortunate than him or her. Now, some other things to look at, and I would think too, the ruler of the 10th and the 12th, let me go back to that a second, because because the restriction and limitation, it may be in some isolated cases, maybe this person's reputation not be tarnished, whether perhaps justified or not justified. Maybe that's some other things to look at, because you'd have the 10th house is associated with reputation, and the 12th house is connected with the restrictions and limitations. So that's another thing to consider. Now, also, as far as the 10th house goes, it's important to look at transits and progressions with this as well, because if you have planets inhabiting the 10th house, whether by transits and or progressions, this could signify greater activity in matters pertaining to the 10th house than otherwise indicated in the natal chart. Somebody, let's say their midheaven goes from Pisces to Aries by progression, for example, in this time perhaps the person it becomes a little bit more assertive and aggressive and outspoken in matters connected with their career. It could also indicate they'll be less passive and they'll be more decisive in matters connected with this. And let's say, for another example by transit, let's say somebody has, let's say they have Neptune transiting their 10th house. Well, this could indicate that perhaps this person may experience a little bit of confusion, ambivalence in matters with their career. Maybe this person becomes interested in a job associated with chemicals, such as chemistry, for example, and there might be something that might be kind of mysterious, or there, as far as the reputation may go at the time, that might be somewhat of an enigma to them, whether their reputation is increased for the better or malign and goes the complete opposite. There might be something kind of confusing and mysterious connected with this as well. So those are some things to look at as far as the a transit may go to the 10th house. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the 10th house in astrology, and stay tuned next time, where I'll be dissertating and talking about having the zodiac sign Aries on the 10th house cusp in a natal chart. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.